Why you shouldn't follow figureheads blindly. We need to stop the dogmatic insistence that renewables alone are going to help us push the brake on climate change. In fact, we are already pushing the limit. I have to preface this video because I am about to get a bit political here. So if you are easily offended by different views, avert your eyes. I dislike Trump. I'm not going to make a secret of that, but I am not going to single him out. In fact, I think I am going to pick on my own this time. I'm going to zoom in on the US and Great Britain. From a humanistic perspective, Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn would align best with my views. But there are a lot of issues on which I disagree with them. So for me, there was no ideal candidate. Sometimes you have to be willing to pick on your own, not just for the sake of argument and disputation, but also to safeguard yourself from the trap of tribalism and cognitive dissonance. Let me introduce you to Aaron Ra. Aaron Ra is an author and makes educational YouTube videos. I actually own his book, and it is really good. And here's the link, just in case you are interested in reading a strong case about the blatant idiocy of biblical creationism. I have met Aaron on one occasion and dined with him. And I am keen to meet him again one day, but that's for an entirely different reason. I feel that there's one subject where I disagree with him, and this is a matter that bothers me on an intellectual level. This helps me to segue into the main topic of today's video, picking on my own kind to help them understand some of the flaws of their thinking. For clarification, I will summarize my own political views so you can see the alignment with some of those I just mentioned. The good of the many vastly outweighs the monetary interests of the very few. I think that capitalism is good, but needs to be controlled. I think that it is better to have the government make education, healthcare, and public transportation available to everyone, preferably through single-payer, non-profit systems. I think that companies could be democratized. I think that the continuous free development of the mind and of skills is one of the most important activities for a human being. I always want to push for the minimization of harm and the maximization of human flourishing, regardless of where you live on this planet. I don't believe that we can solve world-scale problems on national levels. I detest ideological standoffs and geopolitics. I detest the idea that refugees are a problem, and we never address the root causes, which are instability, poverty, war, and hunger. And finally, I am a creature born on the planet Earth. An essential prerequisite for any of this is to have sufficient amounts of energy at our disposal, while making sure that the biosphere upon which we depend doesn't collapse. So this political view lands me on an area in the left spectrum, which is largely unoccupied. Do I belong to the left? I don't think so. Do I belong to the right? No. I think this left-right narrative is a false dichotomy. For instance, you can be on the supposed left of the political spectrum but believe that capitalism is a good system. You can be in favor of institutionalized systems but oppose Marxism or Leninism or even worse, Stalinism. These things can be mutually exclusive. Let's consider some of the political leaders and prominents who seem to be like-minded. I would end up in the camps of Bernie Sanders or Jeremy Corbyn if I would follow them blindly. However, I think critically about the things they say and end up criticizing them as well, albeit by trying to convince followers to pressure them to re-examine their reasoning. On the other hand, there are critical thinkers and science communicators who used to inspire me, like Richard Wolff, Aaron Ra, and Bill Nye. It is fairly important to get through to these people, or their base, to break the dogmatic insistence on the 100% renewable narrative. I've tried this with all three. All three have received free copies of my books, and I tried to contact them in order to challenge their narratives without success. So why do I have this continuous feeling of disappointment when I hear these people speak? And before you say, well, it's because they've lost the election. No, that isn't really what bothers me. I'm more interested in the blatant inconsistency of them acknowledging the problem, but not having the clarity to see that the solution they propose is woefully inadequate. Let's hear some of what they have to say that I don't agree with.
Do we move to an energy efficient and sustainable nation? Is it possible?
Well,
what is the solutions project?
100% renewable energy is totally possible. It's possible in many, many different ways.
And what's the most prolific misconception about climate change?
What he claims to not understand is the rate. It's the speed at which we're adding carbon dioxide. And
I say that that doesn't make any sense based on what we know about the clean energy economy. If Trump and his ilk were serious about this problem, they would actually invest in the technologies of the future, in the sun and the wind, in retooling our energy economy, and create millions of jobs in the process.
so, sir, with some respect, I encourage you to cut this out so that we can all move forward and make the United States a world leader in technology. What we want are advanced wind turbines, advanced photovoltaics, advanced solar concentrated energy plants.
And we had new technology for better and faster electric cars with different types of batteries using, well, half a dozen different types of batteries using different materials. And it looked like we were going to finally invest in clean energy systems, like wind turbines and solar farms and tidal generators and so on, because we didn't have another 4 years to go backwards, polluting our country or polluting the planet worse than we ever have before.
To finish, there is alignment with these people on the seriousness of climate change. However, having done all this research, I cannot reconcile their acceptance of climate change with any reasonable or effective solution. It is inconsistent and too far removed from reality. Their proposed solutions are inconsistent and too far removed from reality. The academic paper to which some of them refer has been deemed irresponsible and unfeasible by a multitude of scientists with relevant expertise. And when I addressed RN personally, he didn't really want to engage with me. Has he also fallen for the so-called 100% renewable narrative? I want to show him that this particular narrative is misleading, and yet he keeps using it. In this case, he was advocating the promise of Bernie Sanders to address climate change, but by doing so, by imposing a moratorium on license renewals for nuclear power plants and pontificating the idea that 100% renewables can do it all. Because Aaron is one of the figureheads who introduced me to the world of critical thinking, I feel that Aaron has insulted my intelligence, and it was this exchange of emails that made me realize that it is unwise to follow anyone blindly. The page, Progressives for Nuclear Progress, which is being run by a friend of mine, posted this telling text on Facebook. Hey, if Rick Perry wants to make nuclear energy cool again, then I'm all for it. It may turn out to be one of the few actions by this administration that I actually like, but I want all hands on deck in terms of political stripe, just as I want all hands on deck in terms of low carbon generation, So let's get some progressive leadership going on this as well. Because if it's just conservatives and Republicans like Perry and Trump rooting for nuclear, then people who are generally progressive are going to be an even tougher and less receptive audience. Maybe science and engineering should not be political, but right now they are, and that's the reality we have to deal with. And if these things have to be political, let's at least make them multi-partisan. I completely agree with this. We have to stop driving ourselves down these partisan roads where easily quantifiable technical solutions have become politicized. We need renewables as an addition to nuclear power to solve this climate conundrum. This debate should be settled and should be agreed upon by both sides of the political spectrum. Technical solutions to climate change may lead to disruption in the fossil fuel industry, but remember that this is merely a move from having people working in fossil fuels to having people working in nuclear, renewables, and the such like. And that's why I do not follow blindly. This exchange with Aaron Ra has been bothering me for half a year now and has finally been put into words. I owe it to my children to remain vigilant. I have to call people out and show them the inconsistencies of their narrative. 100% renewable is not a solution to climate change.